Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. My name's Kirsty Salisbury. You probably already know that because this episode marks 100 episodes of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. I never expected to get here. So this is very exciting for me. For some, it's not such a big deal. For me, considering I went into this thinking maybe I'd get 3 or 4 episodes out, I wasn't really looking to set up a podcast. This is really exciting. So today is a solo episode. It's just me sitting here chatting with you. Gosh, we could talk about so many things. Like, where do I begin? 100 episodes. Let's start with way back at the beginning, why I started the podcast. You may want to go back and get the full story, which is in the episode where I do my podcast about my own experience. I started the podcast because I literally heard a voice. You'd call it God, higher self, inner self, source. There's so many words for this voice. I believe we all have this voice, and that comes out in quite a few of the conversations that I have, that we all have this voice and we can all tune in. And I think that listening to this voice is how we get the absolute juice out of this life. Life is great. Yes, I've had a near-death experience, but I just think there's so much on offer here. There's so much good stuff in this world. I know there's learning, I know there's hard stuff, but honestly, there's so much good stuff to go ahead as well. And I think that good stuff comes when we learn how to take some time out, sit and reflect about how we're living, get really conscious about our moments, and understand why we might be here, what our purpose might be. And a lot of people say to me, oh, well, it's so good for you. You found your purpose. That's great. I don't necessarily know that I have. I think purpose changes. But I know for right now, doing this podcast is part of my purpose. It's what I'm meant to be doing right now. So it started with a voice telling me to go and run the podcast to get audio spoken interviews. I freaked out, didn't know what to do. Here I am 100 episodes in. And now this is a part of I call it work, the part of the things that I do that I just absolutely love. I've met people from all over the world, hundreds of people, beautiful, beautiful people. I've made friendships. I've heard stories. I've been able to do research in an area which really, really interests me. And so, yeah, bringing it back to purpose. If there's something that's on your heart, go and do some research. Go and find out about it. That's how we squeeze the juice out of this life. We learn about things. Anyway, I'm not going to babble and lecture today. Actually, I am going to babble a little bit. Like I said, it's a solo episode. My goal is to set out and release quality episodes into the world so that people all over the place can learn, they can be partly entertained, but it's more about adding value somewhere out in the world. And so when I started this, I didn't know who was going to listen. I thought maybe nobody would listen. I got such a shock when just a few episodes in, people were actually tuning in to hear what I had to say or what my guest had to say. And that blew my mind. So my goal is to set out quality episodes, put them out into the world for quality conversations, and to really open up the conversation on some of these more unusual topics. Quite often they're harder topics when we talk about death, we talk about regret, we talk about, things which are a little bit harder in this life. But if we don't talk about them, they start to just completely control us. We try and hide things and they control us. So I think it's important to be having these conversations. So the podcast started after I heard a voice. This was back in 2017. So it was around about August, September time. I'm not actually sure of the total dates. It's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. And then I released episode 1, which was with Amy Champion. And she was such a champion. I had no clue what I was doing. Amy, if you're listening, I love you. I think you're great. And I so appreciate that you were number 1 and that you were so patient and nice with me. Number 1 went out. That was October 2017. And I thought, what the heck have I done? Oh, no. I was kind of dreading it. I wasn't very excited about putting this episode out into the world. Not because of Amy, just because of my own fears and own insecurities. But I was following the voice. Episode 2 was Sharon Milliman, and she was the first episode to go up into YouTube. So then I was like, oh, now we've got some growth. I'm not only just doing this, but now I'm growing this. And then I still just released things as I could, as I felt led to. I wasn't going to stick to a schedule. I wasn't going to commit to 1 episode every week or 2 a month or anything like that. I literally just released as I felt like I could and felt led to. And it was a really beautiful journey, actually. I look back and I think, man, I was so scared and I was so concerned about things. And actually, it was all okay. And I've learned through that often the things that scare us the most are the pulls that we have to follow things. And it's all going to be okay. Everything's going to work out exactly as it should be. And that's a phrase that comes out of these conversations so often. Everything's exactly as it should be. That was how I felt when I woke up from my own near-death experience. We're talking 30, I think it's 31 years, 30, gosh, I don't even know how old I am. Anyway, it's more than 30 years, early 30, like 31, 32 years ago. And so amazing, so much learning. All the time, I woke up at that time and I was like, everything is perfect. Let's get on with this. Let's live life. And everything around me, I had tubes everywhere. I had a surgical scar. I was paralyzed. There was all this physical stuff going on. And I was like, everything is just perfect. The other message that I've picked up out of 100 episodes is that it all comes back to love. Love is, we're all connected. We are love. Love is the purpose for everything. Really, really enjoyed the episode with Jeff Jansen. He's done 2 episodes. So we did the recorded podcast. Jeff Jansen's a researcher. He's researched thousands of near-death experiences and he's pulled together the common themes. Now, this episode, I absolutely loved. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. And then after that, we went on to do a live session. The live session was all around life reviews, which is a very interesting topic. We dedicated the whole session to life reviews, and Jeff was just a wealth of knowledge. And we talked about the ripple effect of a life review, how in life reviews, you may not only just see what happened, and people talk about in their life reviews that they experience it from their own perspective, from the perspective of the people around them, from all perspectives, they have this life review. But Jeff went on to say that often we experience the ripple effect. So the actions that we have in life, within that life review, we might experience the ripple effect and the ongoing goodness that our intentions and that our deeds can have. And this really blew my mind. So I'm kind of just babbling here. I'm going a bit sidetracked. The podcast started 2017. We got up onto YouTube. It's all about love. Everything's exactly as it needs to be. Okay, so then fast forward a few more episodes and people started to email me and I was like, what the heck? You know, people are listening. That's amazing. But now they're emailing me. And I started to make some really beautiful friends online, listeners for the show and the very initial supporters. And they just encouraged me so much. I think you know who you are. You encouraged me so, so much. And then you started to challenge me. And the listeners were saying, we know you've had an experience too. What about your experience? When are you going to share your experience? And I wanted to run a mile. I wanted to shut down the whole podcast. I wanted to get out of here. So I did what every dedicated person would do. I sat on it and waited for about a year, maybe even a bit longer. So the podcast started 2017, January 2020. Yep, good old 2020 started with a bang for me because I faced one of my biggest fears and I actually released my own solo episode sharing my near-death experience. And some of the things it's taught me, I talk about that voice there, how I started the podcast. A little bit like this, I just babbled for a little while. That was such an amazing experience for me. It was scary, but afterwards I felt this amazing release of freedom and I felt like this weight had lifted off and I felt like, okay, so I've just been playing with this, but now I'm living in purpose. Now I'm actually doing what the voice told me to do. So it took a couple of years to get to that point. Then it seemed to get a bit more serious. More and more people were tuning in. People were giving me feedback, mostly good. Had some beautiful comments and I felt like, wow, this is actually a real thing. This podcast is actually helping people. This is putting goodness into the world, which makes me feel like it's all worth it. That's by intention. That's what I want to do with it. So I released a Patreon group. The Patreon group was to give some support because alongside of all of this, I was trying to fund this and support this single-handedly because I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't want I just didn't want to say, hey, can you give me money to keep going with this? But when the rubber hits the road and I got a bit more serious and then I had to pay subscriptions for more platforms and more things, and I was setting up accounts all over the place and putting in not full-time, but a lot of hours to get all of these episodes out there. I was potentially a little bit slow in the beginning. It took me quite some time. Then I set up this Patreon group so that people could become financial supporters of the show. And we had our group. It was our VIP subscribers group. It's still going today. And thank you to everybody who's in there. You are amazing. You make such a difference. I want to give a shout out to our super subscribers. So people like Anna, we've got Charlotte, we've got Stuart, we've got Lorianne. Gosh, I think there's a few other there. They're on the highest tier of subscription for the show, and that just goes such a long way to keeping the lights running. I'm not in this to make money. I've had some awful emails come through. Oh, you're just in this to make money. This doesn't even cover itself yet. So have a think about that. I'm absolutely not. I'm in this, like I say, to get the content out there. And there have been so many times when I've thought, right, I think I'm done. I think this is enough. But I actually can't stop. I cannot stop this podcast. I can't stop. I have to keep going. And like I say, I love it now. It's one of my favorite things. I've met so many amazing people. I'm all over the place. 2020, we had the Patreon group. That was great. But then I had quite a few people come to me and say, look, I would really like to support you, but I don't want to be in a Facebook group, because the idea was you went into Patreon, then you got channeled into a Facebook private members group. And many, many people have tried to join that group. If you've tried to join that group, it is only for the VIPs. You are welcome to become a VIP to join that. Entirely up to you. So then I set up the Let's Talk Near Death online community. We were in lockdown in 2020 for quite a lot of the early part of that year, early to mid part of that year. Set up the community in September. So lockdown gave me a really good chance to be able to spend some time on that. Set up the Let's Talk Near Death community. There is a free platform. There is the VIP subscribers paid platform. And that's where all the episodes are. That's where there's some conversation. It's your place to come and have a discussion outside of Facebook, because a lot of us are more wary about Facebook, about whether it's secure or safe, or all sorts of concerns out there. So the community is a lot more specific. It's a specific place to come and be able to have those conversations. Anybody is welcome there. You just go along to www.letstalkneardeath.com. And then in January 2021, I was feeling like this is just so cool. I love chatting to everybody. Let's set up some live sessions. And that was a bit of facing my fear of going live, because what you don't know is that I'm actually a total introvert. I get behind the screen and hear, and I can talk to you, but it's like no one's listening, because it's just me recording on my own. When I'm with the listeners, it's a little bit different. It's like maybe they're listening and that's okay. And I know people will listen at a later date. I'm an introvert. I spend a lot of time on my own. I recharge being on my own. And so I was a little bit afraid of that. So I'm like, okay, let's go and do this. And that's another key to life. If we're afraid of something, let's push through the fear. Let's make friends with fear. That's where the good stuff is. So I decided to do these live sessions to get me out of my comfort zone, to rev up the podcast a bit more, and to be able to put out more content, more episodes. And because also a lot of the guests were saying, I loved coming on the show. Can I come back on? Could we do a second episode? So the live sessions are more around the content that's not the story. So it might be the lessons that they've learned since they did the episode, since they had their experience. It might be the work that they're doing, research that they're doing. We talk about all sorts of topics. And yes, I do get feedback as well that this is the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Can't even say the name right. And yet here I am, and I'm talking about past lives and reincarnation and UFOs and paranormal and ghosts. And, you know, the list just goes on and on and on. And they're like, yeah, but it's the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. But what happens when we talk about near-death experiences is we open up a world of possibilities, a world of opportunities, because if someone has a near-death experience, quite often they have something that's not of this world. They meet past loved ones, they return, and they've got what we call giftings. They've got now after effects where they can see spirits, or their psychic abilities, or in mediumship, they've got electromagnetic interference, all of these good things that we talk about. There are so many side effects that can happen, after effects, I should say. And if you have an experience, you're suddenly seeing spirits and beings and things like that, that opens another part of the conversation. And the thing that people say is when they have the near-death experience, it's like I was at home. I was like I'd been there thousands of times before. I knew this place. I've been here before, which opens up a conversation around reincarnation, which opens up a conversation about past lives, which opens up, it just keeps going and going and going. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful conversation. It's very complex. It's very wide. I'm really aware that not every episode will resonate with everyone. And so listening to an episode, if it doesn't resonate with you, I just want to say that that's okay. Move on to another one or go back to one of the older ones. They don't always resonate with me 100% either. I think they're amazing. I think there's so much interesting content. What they do is they get me thinking. And I think as soon as we can't question things, as soon as we stop asking questions, I think we lose something that's very, very important. I think it's always really, really important to ask questions. And, this is what I'm doing here. I'm having a blast asking all of these questions. So I listen to the episodes. Some I don't release. It doesn't mean that I don't believe the person. It doesn't mean it was a bad episode. It just means that there's a check in my spirit that says, just wait. And so some of them get released to the VIPs only. There is extra episodes in that VIP group that don't go public. There's extra content, there's discussion points. I did a thing recently about dreams on my 30th NDE anniversary. That was quite significant for me. I was supposed to be in Machu Picchu climbing up the mountain, but COVID hit, so that got put on hold. But I just jumped in there and had a little, here's how I'm feeling on this 30th anniversary. So little things like that, that's all in that group. But it's okay if an episode doesn't resonate with you, or a person doesn't, or a story doesn't, because what I've learned doing these episodes is that everybody is in a different place, a different stage, and a different level of development. And it's not to say one's more advanced, one's less advanced, one's better, one's worse, one's easier, one's harder. They're just different. And so if it doesn't resonate, that's okay. And if you would rather that things were done differently, that's also okay. I love the suggestions that come in. Some of them are really positive, some of them not so much. And it's great to know as listeners what you want. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I feel is correct within my spirit, what my heart's telling me, what this voice is telling me. This voice is amazing. I'm sure you've all got the voice. If you haven't got the voice, take some time and sit. I've got this beautiful chair just behind my screen. You can't see it. It was my dad's chair before he died. And I quickly took that because I said, I want that chair. I sit in the chair and I just reflect and take time, go, okay, world, what is this about? Why am I here? What am I meant to be doing? So if you don't feel that voice, it may be just a chance to be a bit stiller. Is that even a word? To be more still. Take some time to reflect and just find out what the purpose is. Gosh, things I've learned after doing 100 episodes. I've learned that everything will be okay. We're here for lessons. There are hard things. Everything will be okay. We are not responsible for other people's spiritual growth. This is a big thing. We're not responsible for how other people live their lives. And I'm aware also, talking in this, you probably heard the conversation that a lot of people have had a near-death experience. They come back, their relationships break down. They find it hard to integrate. They find it hard to go back to the job or to the setting that they were in because they've been impacted so profoundly. And that's okay. It's difficult, but it's okay. And so I've learned that over all of this, love is the main thing. It all comes back to love. Love is the key thing. I urge you, go and listen to Life Lessons. I can't remember the full title now. Jeff Jansen, Life Lessons from Near-Death Experiences, I think it is. Beautiful, beautiful conversation. It all comes back to love and how we treat ourselves. And that includes self-love. It includes how we treat our animals, our pets, the people around us. There was another thing, actually, the domino effect. So we talked about that in the life review of just how being positive can change everything. So it's very easy to be negative. It's a lot easier to be negative than positive, I think. And we can surround ourselves and get very familiar with negative environments, negative people, negative conversations. It becomes a pattern. If you think of all the dominoes It just takes one domino not to fall or to remove one domino so that the rest don't keep falling to change that entire pattern. And this sticks with me. It's all about love. So if we can be more positive, if we can have gratitude and embrace the good things in life, we can be the thing that stops that domino. We can be the breaker. So we make a little gap between the dominoes. We can affect everything going on. And we think to be positive and to smile at somebody and say hello, just be friendly. We think it makes no difference, but it makes such a massive difference. So that's another thing that's really stood out to me. I love all the concepts. We've talked about time, how it may not be linear, how we might be living multiple lives all at the same time. That's pretty exciting. Talked with, I think it was with Dr. Yvonne Kaysom. We talked about how you could potentially live lifetimes overlapping. Now, this blows my mind. It made me think about the Doppelganger concept. Now, I hope I've said that right. I believe that's a German word, where there's not two of you, but you might have someone who is just so similar to you or looks identical to you. And people will say, hey, I just met your doppelganger, meaning somebody who's very, very much like you. It made me think about that if two souls are living together in the same lifetime, but time is not linear, whether that could be a thing, whether that's possible. I wonder what it's like, because I think it was Yvonne. She said that she had met her, I believe she said she met her other part of her spirit while she was alive. If that's not correct, I do apologize. 100 episodes have kind of all blurred into one. In saying that, each one I very specifically remember, but it's the details. I'm not so good with details. They tend to fall out of my mind quite a lot. So time may not be linear. Everything's okay. Everything's exactly as it should be. We don't have to resonate with everything. We've got different people in our lives, different things going on. The hard stuff is often the good stuff, just a little bit tricky to see it. And the other one that I want to address is people wanting to have a near-death experience. There is so much hard stuff that goes with it. For me personally, there was the physical trauma. I woke up, like I said, I was paralyzed. I had a surgical scar. I had tubes everywhere. I had a whole new future to head into, and it looked pretty grim. There was a lot of physical time that went with that, and that's okay because I learned through that. But to wish for an NDE, I don't know. It's an interesting concept for me because I think there's so much stuff that goes with it. Yes, the experience is beautiful. Yes, there's so much that happens and you change forever. But wishing for one, it's a concept that I don't quite get my head around. A lot of spiritual transformation experiences that we've talked about. So these are where there's no evidence of death or no clinical death. There's no reason to have considered yourself to have died. We've talked about spiritually transformative experiences, which again is part of that subtopic of the bigger topic. They're amazing. There are so many different types, including things like after-death communication, having out-of-body experiences. Luis Monero, he was a fascinating episode when he talked about astral travel. There's another name for that, which my mind has gone blank because here I am just babbling. When you go out of body when you're sleeping. Fascinating interview, because what I learned through that, and I did not know about this, I've dabbled in this type of stuff for years and years and years. And I think about 10 years ago, I really tried to get into astral travel. Lucid dreaming, that's the other name for it. I really wanted to have these out-of-body experiences and be really aware, because I was like, it'll be so cool to be flying around, because I love the concept of flying. It'd be so cool to be flying around out of body and choose where my dream goes, what I do, who I see, how I interact, the experiences that I have. I thought it was really cool. But what I didn't know was that often people who have astral travel or lucid dreaming, they have a similar experience like a near-death experience. So they might visit past loved ones. They might go through the tunnel of life. They might have a life review. So interesting. So I've learned so much like that, things like this that I never even considered. I loved our recent interview with Bud McGargy. Now, Bud, we talked for an extra 45 minutes for behind the scenes for the VIP group. We could talk all day because I just found his topic so interesting. But he talked about the octopus concept, how you've got the octopus head and then the 8 tentacles. And he talked about how there might not be 8 tentacles. There might be 1 to start with, then 2, then 3, then 4. And the head is like the main part. I'm going to call it the motherboard. You can go and listen to the episode to get the full content. But how the tentacles, how we may be split. We may only be, say, 60% in one incarnation. And there's a possibility we could be 40% in another one. As we get more tentacles, we could be in different places all at the same time. Blows my mind, takes it back to its time linear, takes it back to reincarnation, takes it back to past lives. Chatting with Simon from the Past Lives podcast was very interesting. Amazing information there. We've talked about regressions. We've talked, so many topics. Anyway, you could easily go and listen to 100 episodes. I know you could. It's been an amazing, amazing journey. But I wanted to highlight some of the things that I've learned over this time. And just to say a massive thank you, a huge thank you, because I love it. This is now not my full-time thing. I do quite a few things because I still need to fund this and do other things as well. But the podcast is my priority. That's my passion piece. That's my vision. That's where my heart, I have so much gratitude. How did I end up being able to do this? It's just amazing. So the podcast is my main thing. I appreciate all of you who tune in and listen. I appreciate everyone who subscribes financially, our VIP group. Thank you so, so much. It really does make a difference. I thank you to the people that have come through who have then gone on to say, I want coaching. They listen to me. They say, I like that. I resonate with that. Can you please coach me? So I do lots of different types of coaching, whether that's life coaching. I do death coaching. I'm also a registered funeral celebrant. I have a book called Dying Well, which is an approachable guide to death. It's on my website. It's all about a holistic view of death because, like I say, my passion is to open up the conversation around death, dying, regret, near-death experiences, spiritually transformative experience, the whole works. I want to tackle some of the things that we don't talk about so often. So I greatly appreciate you all. I've talked quite a bit in this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for your support. Please do share the episodes because it means that they get out to more people. It means that more people can be impacted by the conversation. It's not about me. It's about the topic. It's about the learning. And like I say, if things don't resonate, that's okay. Oh, I've got to share the final thing. I've learned that I don't think there are any right answers. I don't think that there is any one way or there is an absolute truth in the majority of things. So the things that we talk about, we don't know the answers. We can't know the answers. We have the experiences. We have our beliefs. We have our convictions. We have our perceptions, things like that. But I don't think there's one hard and fast set way or set rule. And let's just be a little bit nicer to ourselves. Self-love's a big thing. That's the big journey that I've been on, self-love. And understanding that we just need to do our best. We need to put our best foot forward, and that's how we live our bestest, juiciest life, which is something I'm so passionate about. Thank you once again. 100 episodes in. We've got a whole lot more coming up. I've nearly pre-recorded the entire next season as well. So some amazing episodes. If you're listening to this and you've had a near-death experience, please let me know. I'm happy to chat. I would love to get more and more stories out there. The live sessions are opening up the bigger conversations. So if you're happy to jump on for a live session, let me know. There's a lot of people who are really gifted and great at what they do. It's got to have the purpose piece for me. Would love to see more of that coming through. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with me for 100 episodes. I wish you all the best wherever you are. And honestly, my heart is just so full. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next season back on the Let's Talk Near Death podcast.